Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into the Silver Spook podcast. I am Silver Spook Christian Miller, and I'm very excited to be here with Joshua Neurnberger. Is that correct? How you pronounce it?
That's correct.
Josh is an award-winning interaction and visual designer in Los Angeles. His work has been featured in Wired, IGN, The Onion's AV Club, Ars Technica, PC Gamer, and Game Developer Magazine. What we're mostly going to be talking about today is his game Gemini Rue, which is won PC Gamer Game of the Year award among others for I believe 2012, if I'm not mistaken. It's one of the top-selling Wadjet titles. If I think it might be the top-selling Wadjet title, I really enjoyed it a lot. That's like one of my favorite point-and-click adventure games. Anyway, so Josh, why don't you just go ahead and talk a little? You can talk a little bit about yourself, apart from what I just said.
Sure. Yeah, I'm the creator of Gemini Rue. That was like 7 years ago now. So that was quite a while ago. I was just thinking before I hopped on the call, it's actually been 10 years, so that would be the beginning of 2008 when I first came up with the idea for the game and started just brainstorming it and actually creating the game in 2008. So just a little bit of background on that, I guess, is I started creating that game, originally called Boryokuden Rue, when I was in high school. It was my last year of high school, and I basically had this idea of creating this game. I'd always wanted to create games since I was young, playing a lot of point and clicks like Monkey Island. So I started that game, and then I worked on it for a few years. It was in the Independent Games Festival, and then it was released in 2011 with Wadjet. And since then I've just been working as a designer for various companies doing different design work. So that's where I am today.
Awesome. So Gemini Rue, 20. Yeah, so you said 7 years starting in high school. That's a fairly large project, or at least a large chunk of time to be working on something. I guess we start off with a big question. Like looking back at it, like reflecting back on Gemini Rue and like everything that the success and how it's been since the release, or even since the inception. That's like, wow, that's like almost half your life, or I don't know. That's a large chunk of your life, right? Looking back on it, like, what do you think about the game? Like, the experience, like, how has it like impacted your life, or how is it, what do you think reflecting on it?
It was definitely a very good experience. I mean, it was great. I made the game purely for the enjoyment of making games. It was just a passion project. Like, I created it in my free time while I was in school. And then, I just kind of put it out there in the world, hoping people would like it, and then it got all this reception, like at IGF, where it was nominated as like a student game. So I think I was really just surprised and happy that people really, I guess, got it. Like, they understood my vision for the game. Like, yeah, I want to tell this great story, and there's going to be this emotional punch at the end of the game. That was like the whole driving emotional core behind the gameplay. So I think I was just very relieved that people accepted that and understood it and appreciated it. Like, in a lot of reception or reviews, people are like, yeah, this game is great, I love the story. So then that just is very validating for me. So yeah, very happy with how it was received.
Yeah, awesome. I can imagine. That's a it's a like yeah, it's just straight up. That was your you finished it close to the end of your
Right.
college career. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
that's correct. Yeah.
Oh, okay, and then you kind of like left it to or kind of had Dave Gilbert of Why Jedi kind of basically do the publishing once you kind of finished everything else up.
Yeah, the story behind that was so I think I was developing the game for almost so I started it in 2008 and then it was at IGF, the Independent Games Festival, I think in 2010. So by that time it was in development for 2 years. So it was basically done. So I was just thinking, how do I release this game? What's the best way to do it? Because I also wanted to sell it commercially. So at that point, I started talking to Dave because we both were avid adventure game studio users. And Dave he picked up the project at that point before the release, and he uh, helped add the voice acting, do a lot of more playtesting. He has like a mini army in his online community.
Yeah,
So yeah, from there, we just both worked together to polish it, and then we released it the following year.
I see. Yeah, that's one thing I love about all the Why Jedi games. That's how I came. I to be honest, like, as I mentioned, I didn't start off as the largest like point and click adventure fan. I hadn't like played like a lot of the earlier like the Monkey Islands like early in my childhood. I kind of came to it later, but it was like games like Gemini Rue, Primordia Techno Babylon that I kind of was sold on it, and so yeah, I'm like yeah, it's one of the it was one of those that kind of converted me. I was more of in a first person shooter, a more mainstream, like I would say like larger scale games kind of player, big RPGs, and then kind of fell in love with these point and clicks and AGS itself. So yeah, that's really I'm really glad that I'm glad that you guys got it made and released when it was. Anyway, so just a little more on the game itself. I mean, because I do love this the story of it. Basically, it's a very noir. I think is it's a sci-fi and noir, neo noir
Mm-hmm.
sort of
Yep.
story. Very atmospheric. I mean, that's one thing I really remember
Yeah.
about Gemini Rue is that intro screen with just the rain hitting the pavement and that moody, almost like a Humphrey Bogart. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
Humphrey Bogart's
Yeah.
in space soundtrack. It's just like
Sure.
so nailed it, right? Anyways, you want to talk you can talk a little bit about how you came to the some of the design decisions
Mm.
about that. Whatever you want. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so I guess the main inspirations, so the game is very dual in its settings and themes. Like you have Azrael in a very, like you said, neo-noir environment, and then Delta 6 is in a very clean and sterile science fiction environment. So the main inspirations for each of those two halves. For Delta 6, the video game Portal came out a few years before that, and I really fell in love with its simplicity, but its uh, extremely well executed storyline that was meshed with the gameplay in that game. And it was a short game, it was only like 90 minutes long, but they just did it a really great job. So that was one of the main inspirations for Delta 6. And then on Azrael's side, probably Cowboy Bebop, the anime. I don't know if you're familiar
Oh
with.
yeah, I've watched it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably the leading inspiration. I mean, Azrael is basically Spike Spiegel combined with a few other characters like Rick Deckard. Um, and then also Blade Runner is an obvious influence. And then I guess noir in general, just in terms of its its style, its visual imagery played a big influence, but I don't think any one specific noir film really played a big influence. It was mainly Cowboy Bebop for Azrael.
I see. Yeah. No. I do remember Cowboy Bebop, and I can see the similarities in those. Yeah, and like Blade Runner. I mean, this is kind of. I mean, my kind of specialty is always the cyberpunk and edge of things. While we're on that topic, since we already got there quickly, why don't we just? I'll ask you now. What's your favorite science or favorite cyberpunk? Well, we can start with film, I suppose. Yeah.
Favorite cyberpunk film?
Yeah.
Um, I will probably put Blade Runner at the top. I think the first time I watched it like 3 times or something, and I probably didn't like it until the second or third time I watched it. And then The Matrix is another favorite. I'll put that as number 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Blade Runner is definitely just a so the tally so far is 12 for Blade Runner and I think 2 for Ghost in the Shell
Oh,
as the
like
top.
the new Ghost
Uh,
in the Shell or the anime film?
the original, I think
Okay,
the original 1995
yeah,
live action.
sure.
Yeah. So I don't know. Have you seen you've seen that one? I'm guessing.
I think I've seen the anime. It's been a while, but I have seen the new film, and I thought it wasn't that bad. I'm not too familiar with the Ghost in the Shell universe, but I thought the new film with Scarlett Johansson, it was not as bad as I heard it was when I saw it. I thought it looked great. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't think it was as bad as people said either. Definitely not up to the original 1995
Sure.
Ghost in the Shell though. Anyways, yeah. So yeah, how about do you have a cyberpunk book and or game or just take your pick?
Book, well, one of my favorite sci-fi novels is Ender's Game. I don't know if you would classify that as cyberpunk, though. It's definitely science fiction.
Uh,
Um, yeah, go ahead.
oh no, yeah, no, I know Ender's Game. Yeah, I'm not sure if that would, but I mean, yeah, it's that's fine. I mean, how about game? What's your
Game. I do have a certain liking towards the original System Shock from like 1993 or whatever.
the original? Yeah.
The original one. Yeah, I remember towards the end of that game, I don't want to spoil it, but there's basically a section where you think where like everything, it seems like there's no hope, like in a game sense. Like there's way too many bad guys and monsters that will kill you, and just that like kind of flip, that quick turn where it seemed like you were gonna win, but then suddenly it all goes down the drain. I was like, whoa, that was a very emotional pivot in the game that I think has rarely been duplicated for me in other games. But yeah, the whole atmosphere was very dystopian and cool. So I like System Shock, the original.
Yeah, I have to confess, I think I may have not even. I think I got. I don't think I got all the way through the first System Shock, but I believe it was because my computer started malfunctioning. System Shock 2, though, I definitely got. I played through that one multiple times. I think it's one of the most my top most played games of the 90s. After I don't know if Deus Ex. Yeah, Deus Ex was released in 2000. I don't know if that counts. Have you played Deus Ex by any chance?
No, I haven't. I think I missed the boat on that one. Just went.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because you graduated college. Well, high school. You graduated college in what year?
Early 2010s. So I think I was, yeah, I graduated college like 2012.
Oh, okay, okay. So I think the what do you call the the rating? I think Deus Ex, yeah, would have been 2000. So that would have been, yeah, that would have been
A
pretty. Yeah.
little,
Anyways,
yeah, ahead of my
go.
time.
Yeah, a little bit. If you ever get a chance, I mean, it is like it is my favorite of the. I mean, I'm like a big cyberpunk fan. Like that is like I have a weird connection to cyberpunk that you can find out on other podcasts that I talk at length about. But basically, like Deus Ex is my favorite of those games. And it was the game that pioneered the concept of, I guess in the 90s you had first person shooters, right? You had like Doom, you had Half-Life, you had all these kind of first person shooters,
Yeah.
and then you had RPGs, right? You had like Fallout and all these other role playing games. And Deus Ex was the first first person shooter slash RPG hybrid, and it pioneered the concept of like the immersive sim, kind of like you think of like Prey or Dishonored, this kind of world where it's like very realistic, and the choices that you make in the world, like there's actual physics systems and a lot of different.
Hmm.
That concept was kind of pioneered by Deus Ex, and it's of course looking back at the graphics now, of course, are going to be some people would say abominable, some people would just say retro.
Well, it was good for the time.
Yeah, some people would even say it wasn't good for the time, but
Oh.
but there are mods to make it look better. Anyway, I'm not gonna. But it is my favorite game of all time. It's my favorite game of all time. My favorite Cyberpunk game. Anyways, back on topic. So well, I mean, to get a little further into Gemini Rue, I really like. I guess what I liked about it, apart from like the mood and the setting, the I guess the story. Yeah, I really like the way. I don't want to spoil it, but the way in which there's two, obviously, as you said, it's a dual nature. There's two main characters, and you don't quite get how their stories add up for the first good portion of the game, and then there's a big twist that I'm not going to talk about to prevent spoiling it. But that was a major. I really loved the way that kind of unfolded. It's like a really brilliant plot line. I don't know if yeah, I guess I don't want to spoil it too much, but maybe you can talk a little about the writing process. Like, how did 7 years writing it, or how did it?
Yeah, the 7 years is since the game was released. So the game I was working on it for 3 years. So yeah, the writing process, it was basically taking like all my favorite ideas from like TV shows, anime, films, books, and then plucking out certain like things from those shows or techniques they used. Like if you know the TV show Lost that was on during the mid 2000s, I was a fan of that show, and they were doing some interesting things with like multiple timelines and flashbacks and flash forwards and flash sideways to confuse the viewer in terms of like the chronology of the story, what's happening when. So just different like techniques like that. I was pulling from different shows and films and books, and kind of was thinking, okay, how can I fit all these different ideas I have together into one coherent storyline? Like I had this other idea about a prison break from an asteroid in space, which ends up being the climax of the game. Or, yeah, like the man in the trench coat under the rainy awning, a very kind of stereotypical noir scene. But basically different pieces like that, and then connecting the dots in between is how I ended up with the story. But I guess the crux, like you said, was the dual storyline. So basically all the puzzle pieces are working towards that conversion of the two stories and the impact that has on the narrative and the twist, as you said. So yeah, it was just fitting everything together like one big puzzle, I guess.
I see. Yeah, it's definitely like the way that the way that it unfolds. I often think of it a lot like a lot of the writing process is like this all the story. I mean, as they say, what is it like? All stories have already been told. There's like so many Greek archetypes, and there's like 3 to 7 major storylines, and there's like the hero's journey, etc. And you can't really redo it. But what you can do is you can rewrite. There's so many stories, and they've all been told so many ways. But what you can do is rearrange the order in which the playing cards are flipped, and the way in which you reveal things, as you said, like jumping forward, jumping backwards, jumping sideways in time, can like kind of play with make things more dramatic or less dramatic or more surprising by the order in which you reveal information to the reader and the writers. I mean, I think of it kind of a lot of times as the writer's job is to kind of come up with the maximally impactful ordering of the sequence of events. I don't know. That's why. I don't know if you had that experience. Did you have to like, oh, this sequence was good, but it would be better if I put the shootout here or don't tell him. Obviously you don't know anything about who the characters are in the beginning, but like, did you ever go back and rewrite stuff? Like, I don't know if that's something you did or.
Yeah. I remember there were a few scenes where certain information was revealed, like in the weather tower shootout where Azrael finds the drugs. There's like a certain line by the girl, and she reveals a piece of information, if you can recall what it is, like, I'm so-and-so, I'm whatever the person. And the point of it there was to like do the reveal of that information in a very chaotic scene because the bad guys are there trying to kill you. So it kind of like increases the tension even more. Okay, the bad guys are here, so you have like level 2 of tension. But then she adds that extra information, and then the player might be like, what? She's so-and-so? So then it like upgrades to level 3. So they're thinking about it more in the moment. So that was actually a change because I think originally she revealed that piece of information earlier in the story. I can't remember when, but somebody suggested, oh, you should do it there because it makes more sense. It's more exciting. So yeah, there were a few scenes, or at least that one, where information was pushed forward or backward. And then overall on the writing, I think I actually cut a lot of dialogue. Like the game was a lot more wordy and philosophical. If you think it's philosophical now, it was more so before. So actually cut a good amount of dialogue to where it currently is, and it still might be too philosophical, which is what some people have said. But yeah, those are the two main things.
I see. I thought the amount of dialogue was pretty spot on. I mean, there's definitely no, I mean, as point and click adventures go, I think it's definitely, as the older school LucasArts era ones go, it's definitely on the lighter side in terms of the amount of dialogue. But yeah, that is a question that you have to always ask. How much is too much? But yeah, I think that I do think that the questions that were asked in the game. I'm also really big on the philosophical edge of the cyberpunk as this kind of exploration of the nature of being human. What does it mean to be human? If you're a fan of Blade Runner, it's hard to be a fan of Blade Runner and not be someone who is interested in those kind of questions. I think that a lot of it, Gemini Rue obviously deals with memory. I don't think it's spoiling to say that one of the main characters and one of the large themes is if you were to have your memory erased, what would that mean? I don't know. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about what do you when you're thinking about that? Like what kind of what did you really want to get across there? Do you have something, or what? Yeah, what was the thought process there in that philosophical side of things?
Um, yeah, I think the point I wanted to make is actually left pretty open-ended, as you see in the end of the game. I'm not going to say what it is, but the ending of the game kind of wraps up the story up to that point. It makes a little statement about everything that's transpired, about memory, what makes you who you are, kind of like posing the question, does our memory make us who we are, or is there more to that? Like what makes Azrael or any other character? And then the game just kind of ends with the question instead of, it partially answers it, but I don't think it makes a full-on answer. So that's probably the way I wanted to convey that philosophical topic. I didn't want to full out answer it. So, yeah, I think it's best open for the viewer to decide.
No, yeah, absolutely. I that's one of the things I always liked about Blade Runner, and the fact that we don't, it doesn't answer. It leaves the things open. Even in, I don't know if you've seen the sequel, Blade
I
Runner
have.
2049.
Yes, I
You
have.
have. It left the question: is Rick Deckard a replicant or not? And even between the show creators, Ridley Scott is what is it? Yes, and Harrison Ford is like no, 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 and there's big no, not big. There's just a little disagreements there, and I think that the question is still left open in the second um,
Yeah.
Blade Runner 2049. I don't know. What did you think about the more recent one? Uh,
Yeah. Maybe what did you think about it first?
oh, okay. What did I think about it? I liked it. I mean, to be totally honest, and I've said this before, I was mostly worried that this is like, Blade Runner is like a cathedral, I think, as Denis Villeneuve has said, and it's, it was kind of, it's like you're taking on this kind of like one of the most revered films, not just cyberpunk films, but films of all time, and I was like, I thought it was going to be totally ruined, and I think that their director, Ryan Gosling, everybody involved was like, yeah, I'm basically, I'm afraid that we're just going to totally ruin it. But knowing that, just accepting that we're probably going to be like, this is going to be a car crash, and let's just have fun with it. And the fact that they came out of that, that film production, and it is anything that does any kind of justice to the original Blade Runner, and I think it does, and it, while simultaneously kind of being its own thing. In terms of like the cinematography, the pacing, the not just being like a schlocky,
Yeah.
Transformers action movie. I was like really amazed by that. I'm actually a little bit befuddled as to how Blade Runner 2049 was even made.
Yeah.
I'm still wondering what happened there. I don't know what do you think?
Yeah, I think I share a lot of the same feelings. I think it's a great and worthy successor to a cult film. So I don't think Denis and the crew could have done a better job. I think they really went all out and hit the ceiling, as far as they could have gone. But I guess on the flip side, yeah, I think it's kind of like a film that didn't need to be made, if you can understand that. Like, it almost shouldn't exist. Like, why are we watching another Blade Runner? Um, but yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the sheer craft of the movie. Like, every shot, every scene, the atmosphere, the music. I think they really preserved the original atmosphere of the film, and yeah, took the themes of the original film and developed them, which I think is very admirable of them to do.
Yeah. So I would have been fine with just Blade Runner, and them. And then maybe 35 years later, they'll unfreeze Harrison Ford's cryogenically preserved body, and we'll have Blade Runner 3. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyways, but yeah, I mean, I kind of have an unusual relationship with cyberpunk, but I definitely have a, I'm not like one of the. There's a lot of people who are kind of, how would you say this? Cyberpunk nationalists, cyberpunk purists. They have a very specific thing that they, but I'm not so hard line on that. There's some people who only watch, or they kind of have the definition. I guess what do you call the definition of cyberpunk is kind of a topic, and especially nowadays. Well, how about our Altered Carbon? Have you seen that by any chance?
I haven't, not yet, but I've definitely seen the billboards.
You've seen the bill. Yeah, that's another one. I mean, it's worth checking out. Anybody who hasn't seen it yet, it looks on the at the first viewing, it may look like yet another Blade Runner ripoff, but I mean, my personal thought is it is more complex than that, and it deals with it expands the themes. It's worth a look.
Yeah, is it based off of any other source material, or is it like its own thing?
Altered Carbon is based off of the early noughties. I would call it post cyberpunk. It's post cyberpunk era, but it's much more cyberpunkish. Book by Richard K. Morgan, Altered Carbon. And and I read it when it first came out. I actually read it in a Borders Books and Music when that was still a thing before they were destroyed. I read it. I read the entire series, the Takeshi Kovacs series, which is Altered Carbon, Woken Furies, Broken Angels. I think I said that out of order, but anyways, it's actually this is one weird thing. I saw a lot of similarity between Altered Carbon and Gemini Rue. I almost thought you might have read the book because it is it is a cyberpunk tale in the sense that it is dealing with capitalism, mega corporations turned up to 11, and dystopian society with these huge extreme inequality. You have these Methuselahs that live. They're basically immortal, extremely wealthy people who live basically forever by transferring their consciousnesses from body to body, and then you have everyone else who basically have to take the bodies that they're given, and if you can't afford a body, then you have to pay your sleeve, your body mortgage to exist. And it's a very cyberpunk. It's very the main character is very Azrael-esque. I would say he's very cyberpunk protagonist. He's very hard-boiled, former special forces. Now he's just a hired private eye for a billionaire. What do you call unwilling protagonist. I don't really want to do this, but if I gotta stay alive, I'll do it. Hey, what the heck, right? And but it also combines that with this. There's an interstellar space colonization angle on it, which is that this sleeve technology, the transmission of consciousness from body to body, was created in order to colonize interstellar space. And so that because a part of Gemini Rue involves. I mean, I wouldn't say it doesn't have like space craft, there's part of it involves interstellar travel, I would say. So, but anyway, that's a little about Altered Carbon.
When people were telling me about Gemini Rue, they were also noting like similarities to other existing like franchises or whatever, and one of them was Dollhouse by Joss Whedon.
Yes, yeah.
If you're familiar with that. So people were like, was like Dollhouse an inspiration? Because in Dollhouse, well, I told them no, because I'd never seen Dollhouse. But I found that interesting. I think Dollhouse, it's like assassins take on different personas based on the mission. Like there's one assassin and she gets implanted with different identities to go on missions. Is that right?
To be honest, I know Dollhouse. I have not watched the entire thing, but I think that's basically the premise.
Yeah, but I found that interesting because people were saying there are so many similarities, but I'd never seen Dollhouse. So I think it might just be this genre of cyberpunk or sci-fi has many common themes, that will inevitably come up in your stories. So I thought that was interesting that it bared similarities to other shows without even trying.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's science fiction and again, it's that kind of thing. There's a lot of there's there's a lot of themes that kind of come up and come up again, and there's a lot of what do you call similar to stories. There's a lot of like tropes. There's a lot of
Yeah.
settings that get repeated, but I feel like and this is why I feel it's kind of a mistake to I mean, unfortunately, it's a lot of people, definitely in the Steam, in the game and film thing, it's a lot of people just judge it by the screenshot. Oh, that looks kind of like, it's got black and neon in the night. It's got rain. Oh yeah, I'll click on that. Unfortunately, but I think that if you really dig into a lot of these games and movies, you'll find that yes, on the surface, it looks very similar, but there's unique explorations within that universe that I think only Gemini Rue has some things that like this is another. I mean, just I don't want to go too far into Altered Carbon, but another similarity is there are Yakuza. The Yakuza
Yeah.
play Interstellar Yakuza. The main character is the child of a half Hungarian, half Japanese, like child of a Japanese gangsters in like Alpha Centauri. That is like the main character
Okay.
in Altered Carbon. So that I was like, that was one thing I was like, wow, that's. But I mean, I don't know. Cowboy Bebop, as you mentioned. I mean, maybe Richard, the writer of Altered Carbon, was also, watching that and
Maybe. Yeah. I
watching.
don't know if Japanese, I'm sure they do play a central role in cyberpunk, like Ghost in the Shell, or I'm sure there are other things that I missing that Japan has produced in the cyberpunk genre.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the criticisms. That was the criticism of Later Runner and Ghost in the Shell, right? Is that it's got a lot of this kind of future with Asian influences without all that many Asian people in it. I mean, I find it's interesting fact. I mean, I think it has to do with the fact that the first cyberpunk novels, like Neuromancer, Blade Runner, came out in the time, during the in the 80s when Japan was becoming the mega international powerhouse and it was going to
Yeah.
take over the world, right? So I think that's the heyday was colored by the fact that Japan, the biggest cyberpunk media was made when Japan was seen. Of course, obviously now that's kind of not the case so much. China and other countries are, it's less, that stuff is less plausible now, I think. Which is interesting. I mean, retro futurism is kind of its own genre now, where
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if you play much. I don't know if you play any of those other, what is it, Shadowrun, or those other games. Have you?
Not Shadowrun. I played another game. I'm just gonna throw it out there. I don't know if you've heard of it. Quadrilateral Cowboy.
I've heard of it. I haven't played it though.
Yeah, I think that maybe like retrofuturism. It's like a hacking game, but you hack on a 56K modem.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be retro futurism. Yeah. So, but yeah, it is interesting, how this stuff plays out, and I've been in some interesting conversations with 50-year-old like cyberpunk writers, and then there's like 17-year-old they're still in high school now, discovering cyberpunk and what it means kind of like evolves. It's interesting how the meaning of the term like evolves through the ages, and like now it's kind of seen as it's just kind of a color scheme to certain individuals.
Hmm.
To some people, it's there's this kind of weird, like, I want to call them, it's almost like theological, not theological, kind of
Sure.
like philosophical discussion, Jesuitical discussions on the meaning of the term.
Yeah,
And they
like
get
the themes versus maybe more the outward manifestations of that, like robots versus, what it means to be human.
yeah. Not that I want to get into that, but yeah, it is interesting. But yeah, Gemini Rue. How about like the art style. I mean, talking about the outward manifestations, I really love the art style of Gemini Rue. I like I mean, full disclosure, I made my own adventure game and released it last year, Neofeud, which is a cyberpunk game, and I don't I not that I was like I like what I liked about it was that, and I think you mentioned this in another interview. Some of the choices were, to kind of go with not brush strokes, but
Yeah.
allowing the visibility of the brushstrokes and the art itself to be part of that sort of design. Especially, I think in the grungier, the parts that are intentionally you want it to look like a grungy noir street. It's hard to if it was too clean, right? It wouldn't read that way. And I just really like that. You can talk a little about the art style choices for Gemini Rue.
Yeah. Most of the choice was actually purely out of practicality. Like being an 18-year-old indie developer who's making games in his spare time, you just don't have a lot of time to create like high resolution graphics or 3D models. So yeah, the art style is pixelated. It's very sketchy, very grungy. Like you said, the brushstrokes are showing. But I think one thing that really clicked with people in terms of the art was the color. So like in Azrael's world, the sky is always purple and beige, and the landscape is usually some form of dark blue. Of course, there's the neon lights and everything with the Blade Runner vibe. But the color scheme was actually, again, inspired by Cowboy Bebop. There's one episode called The Ballot of Fallen Angels, where Spike goes up to a cathedral to fight his nemesis, and there's just this great shot of Spike going up these stairs, and there's this massive imposing cathedral waiting for him. It's very ominous, where he's gonna face his nemesis, and I thought that scene was beautiful, so I kind of took that as an inspiration for the art style.
I see. Yeah, definitely like it definitely stood out the uses. I mean, I find this like really interesting. The way in which like color, and I'm sure you do also as art and design being as I understand a larger part of your current job, like the way in which the color conveys certain meanings. As you mentioned, the Matrix. I mean, just to kind of take that, like the way in which the locations. Obviously, these are things are like a lot of it in the Matrix is filmed inside of an Australian city, I believe. But the way that it's kind of there's this very not super noticeable, but there is this green filter,
like
hue tint over everything in the Matrix, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you would call it like a duotone, but yeah, it's very like green and gray whenever they're in the Matrix.
Yeah, and then whereas when they're in the real, as they say, there's this kind of a bluer tint to kind of signify, just to kind of differentiate between the two places. And definitely the duotone thing I think really worked well for the game to kind of it's I think like this is my personal opinion, like getting a signature style, kind of like almost like a visual brand, like in the way that like the white. I mean, back in the day, like the white headphones was like the brand of Mac, or the iPods, and or just having. I don't want to compare your games to iPods, but it's just like that. Like if you could look at any screenshot, and this is another thing I liked about another. Primordia was another one where you could look at any particular screenshot and you could say, wait, that's Gemini Rue, or that's Primordia, right? I think.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just agreeing with you. Yeah, that's a good insight.
I just like personally, because I mean I'm a one person indie developer, so I'm having to think about a lot of these things. Like how and it's a different market now, of course. And then really like being able to stand out. There's 10,000, 12,000 games that are going to come out on Steam now, so it's trickier. So really like being able to kind of nail that distinct visual style, because a lot of people are sold based on a screenshot and or a few seconds of trailer nowadays. So it's So anyway, so I guess I'm saying like yeah, Gemini Rue did that really well. Primordia did that really well. Techno Babylon, is a pretty distinct.
Mhm.
But yeah, the purple and green. Um, Something else I wanted to say and I can't remember what it was. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, was Techno Babylon and Primordia, were those both by at least the art by Ben? Did he do both of those?
Techno Babylon was by Ben Chandler.
Yeah, Ben.
Primordia, yeah, Ben Chandler. He's like Dave's in-house artist now.
Yeah.
And Primordia was by Victor
Okay.
Flug, or you know him? Okay.
Or yeah, I was just wondering if they were both by done by Ben the art, because I know Ben has his own signature style. But yeah, just wondering.
Yeah, and yeah, as I understand it, as I mentioned, like I'm just joking, but I say I'm playing Pokemon with the Wadjet creators. I gotta collect them all. So now
Nice.
I've got the J Burger now, so I'm on a roll. I'm not,
Good.
sorry. I'm joking. I mean, I am like seriously a huge fan of all of the games. I would not be. I would probably still just be playing. I'd probably be playing. I don't know. The latest Deus Ex and Prey, and just the big games. If it wasn't for Primordial, like games like Gemini, I probably would never have gotten in. I mean, I think we can agree it's kind of a more of a niche, a genre.
Yeah,
In terms of
definitely.
so yeah.
Yeah, it's like retro. It's modern retro point and clicks, so it's very niche.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe you can talk a little bit about like I mean I know you kind of got out of the game development. Have you been like obviously your game is still selling and it's still selling fairly well as I take it. I don't know if you have any comments about the game industry, where games are now, adventure games, or what are you playing nowadays? Anything like related to the game world?
Yeah. Yeah, there are a few indie games or just games that I've been into lately. Quadrilateral Cowboy, I mentioned already. That's made by Brandon Chung of Blendo Games. I'm a big fan of all of his work. He made another game a few years ago called Gravity Bone. Have you played that?
Gravity. I don't
It's
think I have played
it's
that
like
now.
a first person shooter. All the characters are blocky. But it just, yeah, you should play it. It's a first person shooter, but it does something that's so ingenious that no other first person shooters have done, that you have to play it. It's actually free.
What is
Uh,
it?
so yeah, definitely check that out. Um,
Okay, and is it? Sorry, what was it called? One more time.
Gravity Bone
Gravity Bone. Okay.
by Blendo Games.
Blendo Games. All right.
Blendo.
Okay, yeah, I've got it up here. Okay, yeah, I'll definitely have a look.
Yeah, but yeah, I liked his newest game is Quadrilateral Cowboy. It's a the gameplay is it's hacking. So the gameplay is actually like programming in a computer, like disable camera and then wait 40 seconds, unlock door. You have to type out these commands in a console, and that's the gameplay. Like you're a hacker infiltrating like a bank, and you have to disable the security. So I thought that was very cool. And then another adventure series that I found really intriguing is Kentucky Route Zero. Have you played that?
I think I played some of it, but I didn't finish it. But I definitely know of Kentucky Route Zero. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's really interesting because it kind of gets rid of gameplay, which is like counterintuitive, I guess, to games, because there's not really much like puzzles or like obstacles that you have to, like solve or figure out, or like compete. Like the game, the way it plays out is more like an interactive fiction. Like you go from point A to B, and when you're at B, you find a character, the character asks you a question, you can say 1, 2, or 3, and it doesn't really matter what you say, but it changes the outcome of the story. And then just the way they've crafted the game, the way it looks, and in particular the camera is really interesting, how they use the camera in different ways in this game. And they move it, they bring it back, they twist it and turn it. It's just a really interesting experience. It's almost like a interactive poem as opposed to a game. But yeah, I found it really interesting.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely know of it, and I know kind of like that kind of game. I would say there's a lot more of those types of games that are kind of they kind of question the nature of game and what is a game, what is gaminess itself, kind of.
Yeah.
Walking simulator is another term that has been obviously thrown around. I don't know if
Like
that's
Dear Esther.
yeah, that would be kind of like one of the most well known ones, I believe.
Yeah, walking simulators are boring.
Oh.
Even though I mean, like, at face value, it's boring, like walking, but I'm sure someone can gather some intellectual enjoyment from a walking simulator. But I think purely it's just boring to walk.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely just walking. I think it has. I think like one of the challenges recently. I mean, this is just kind of a more recent challenge is having adventure games that I'd say to reach a wider audience or to reach a modern audience that has less. I would say it has less disposable time. I mean, disposable income sometimes, but definitely less disposable time and less patience to solve the certain types of puzzles that you would solve in, let's say, a 90s point and click. So I think I mean, I don't want to put words into walking simulator creators' mouths, but I would say that part of it is wanting to get a larger percentage of people completing the game. The games, some of them have one way of doing it is kind of getting progressively easier and more about kind of just choosing options and not really having to solve difficult puzzles to frustrate a smaller number of players. But then you can alienate the harder core point and click puzzle guys. So I mean, that's kind of a what do you call it? A design decision you have to make. I don't know if you have
but I think
opinions.
One trap walking simulators fall into is like pretension. I think sometimes they think that they're more than they actually are by being walking, and they're like, oh, we don't have any gameplay, so we're going to throw some intellectual like ambiguity at you as a player. I think that can only go so far. Like, you need to have some actual content or an actual story, maybe like The Walking Dead by Telltale, even though like they use a gripping story or characters or moral choices in that to grip the player, and they still, they cut out the fluff. You don't have use rabbit on keyhole in The Walking Dead, so they've removed all those zany puzzles, but still have some sort of hook in their content to engage, like a wider audience.
Right, yeah, no, definitely. Like if I mean, if the game doesn't have some kind of at least hook, some kind of storytelling. I mean, even if it's just like a very strong, world building something. Yeah, it can be kind of I don't know. Yeah, it can be. I mean, there's people who are gonna. I mean, there's certain people who will buy almost anything on Steam if it has a green flashing thing that says I'm on sale. There's some people who will click on almost anything. Which is a different. I mean, it's an interesting thing, which is that a lot of games make more money in the sales nowadays that get released than doing this. They make more money during the sales rather than on the release date, which is something that Dave Gilbert has commented on. Techno Babylon was one of them. Which was released, I believe, 2015, and it made less in the release date than in the following sale because of the nature. A part of it is the nature of like in 2011, Mark Yohalam of Primordia also mentioned when Primordia came out, you had a week on Steam's front page with 25 million users. You're talking about millions of people seeing the game. Now, when you release a game on Steam, you have about 30 minutes on the front page, and then you're gone. Because there's there was like one or two, it's like 2 to 3 games a week coming out in 2011. Now there's 30 games per day coming out. So so it's a different game. So Steam is no longer like getting onto Steam is no longer any sort of guarantee of any kind of sales whatsoever that it used to be. So it's just something a new challenge,
The psychology on the sales side is interesting, just to see how much the sales of a game increases when it drops from like $10 to $2, and then everyone's like, oh, I gotta buy it, it's only $2. And then at least you probably know, because you have a game on Steam, right? How much that sales window actually increases revenue, even though it's being sold at a cheaper cost. You may make more money than the original price, getting less sales. So that's always interesting to see.
It's a weird market, and it's kind of like ever evolving, and but it is, I don't know. We could probably go deep on that, but I know you're kind of. Maybe you want to talk about what you're doing. I don't know if you want to talk about what you're doing recently. Have you ever thought of like, hey, maybe one day I'll do Gemini Rue 2 or another game? Have you ever thought that? Or
I haven't really planned on doing Gemini Rue 2. I'll just say that. Sorry to dash your hopes.
Sorry, everybody. No sequel to the greatest adventure game of all time. Sorry about that. Sorry, I don't want to put words in your mouth. But I mean, yeah, that's no, I mean, like, it's totally fine. I mean, when that game. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Game of the Year for PC gamers. I mean, that's just one of the awards. I mean,
yeah, it was Adventure Game of the Year for PC.
Adventure Game of the Year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it was something like I don't know. There's other, but I mean, like, even in that category, and there's several other awards that it won. I mean, it's kind of, that would be kind of a daunting challenge to try to outdo that. I would guess if you were to attempt. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to say how you feel about it, but maybe you want to talk about what you're doing right now, like, or if you want to. I mean, up to you.
Nope, I don't.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it's this is mainly for adventure gamers and cyberpunk and sci-fi folks.
Yeah, I'll just say I'm working as a designer in Los Angeles. That's what I'm doing right now.
Cool. Yeah. So I guess I don't know. How about what is your So you play a lot of kind of, you say you play some shooters, you play some indie games. Like, what was your what is your favorite like genre of games if you had to choose one? Like, is it point and click your core genre? Or?
No, probably indie games would be a genre. Well, I don't know if you can classify that as a genre, but if you can, I would say that. Probably because indie games try out more unconventional means of gameplay, as you know. So I just find them typically more interesting than, Call of Duty 7, 8, 9.
Yeah. How many are there? I don't even know, but there's a lot.
Yeah, there's too many to count.
Yeah, I mean, that's another topic. I mean, I've talked a little bit about this. I worked a little bit in larger game companies, and basically, yeah, I kind of quit that. But for part of it was some of the employment practices, including the crunch and a lot of those kind of things, was very problematic. And also, yeah, the games. Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, as you said, like, indie games, you can really push boundaries. You can do things. Games, indie creators generally, the passion level, the amount of care and desire of the game, the person sitting behind the desk and typing in codes till 2 a.m. and drawing art, and getting arthritis over this thing, but like sweating their blood and tears to get this thing done. It's like for a reason. Whereas like you still sweat blood and tears in a larger game company, but you may be doing that for like I don't even know what I'm doing here. Sometimes I felt that sometimes working at larger companies.
Yeah, but I think there's also the flip side. I still do like some mainstream games, like the newest Zelda that came out. I thought it was great. I loved it, which was wow, the title's slipping my mind right now. The one on the Switch.
Oh, this I'm sure. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. It was a big. I haven't played it, but
yeah, but that game was very interesting to me. I don't know if I was just behind the curve in terms of open world games, but just the sheer sense of curiosity, freedom, discovery in that game really made a big impression. It was like I was very excited when I was playing that game. Like you can go up to a tree, you can chop it down. When it falls over, you can pick up a branch, you can light the branch on fire, you can use that fire to cook an apple, you can eat the apple. Like basically everything in the world worked together. Like it was all like you can explore everything, and it was very very fun and new to me. So I think mainstream games still also have that appeal when done right.
Yeah, definitely. There's some things that there's some those like really deep immersive experiences it's difficult to do something at that level or that depth as an indie for a lot of reasons. I mean, for the kind of same reasons as the choice of the art style itself in Gemini Rue, and the choice to I mean, you can't really have an extremely. I mean, you can have a certain amount of branching storylines, but you cannot have like nearly infinite possibilities, or what would you call? There's a name for that. There's a game design where procedural storytelling, but you kind of know what I'm talking about, right? Where
infinite state machine.
I think so. Where the stories get created by the engine itself, and there's almost this like infinite possibility of narratives, which there's so much work. There's like it's like an exponentially greater amount of work to design that, or just the number of possible permutations to which you could get through a game on that scale is just something that one person would it'd be basically impossible for one person to pull off.
Yeah, on that topic, how do you feel about generative content in games versus like pre-scripted? You know what I mean? Like when a game like Minecraft, everything is randomly generated, I think, so that every experience is different, versus something like any adventure game or RPG where every scene is scripted out. What do you think about the difference between the two?
Like, to be honest, like I haven't really played that many games that had like or
like Skyrim would be something, I think, where like battle encounters are generated by the game, and you might not fight the same person in the same place,
Yeah, like I think that like I can see how like that there's there's some good sides to that kind of generated content, or randomly, I think procedurally generated might be the term, but that kind of like every experience is kind of randomly generated. I mean, there's certain good things about that, in the sense that it will give you a unique experience. It kind of like multiplies the replayability of any particular game, and I think that is good. Like from a like there's a place for that. Obviously there's a place for that. Like if we just go by voting by the numbers, people buy Skyrim, people play these games. But I think like there's something to be said for. I mean, tying this back to calling back to our earlier discussion of the writer's job, right? If your job is to kind of like pick and choose the specific events, like in Blade Runner, every single piece, every single piece of blowing trash that Japanese Coca-Cola ad and the geisha digital, like everything was perfectly chosen, right? If it was randomly generated Blade Runner, I don't think the impact would be the same. I mean, that you kind of know what I'm saying.
Pretty much, yeah. Denis has his thumbprint on everything in the movie, the new one at least, and the old one for Ridley.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I think I'm in a similar boat. I think procedurally generated content in theory sounds good. Like, great. I'll never experience the same thing twice. When I go into this dungeon or cave in Skyrim, I'm gonna fight some bad guys I haven't fought before. But I think usually when I think about it, or when I compare that experience to like an entirely pre-scripted narrative or experience that the developer has set up, like in a traditional RPG like Final Fantasy, for instance, minus the random battles, of course. But when I compare procedurally generated to that kind of pre-scripted game, I think usually the pre-scripted game comes out on top just because of the fact that the developer was holding my hand and I felt everything they wanted me to feel. So I feel like that will win at the end of the day, at least for me.
I think that it's. I mean, to be completely honest, I haven't played that many. As I said, the procedurally generated, but of the ones that I've played, I've had that same feeling, and I think similarly. I mean, I think it's for a similar reason that the 100% CG, like multi-$100 million budget films. I don't want to name any names, but one of them starts with a T and it ends with the Ormers.
Okay.
I mean, CG is fine and it's great. It's a tool in the toolbox, but it is something about. I don't want to. I know it's not really fair to compare computer-generated graphics to procedurally generated game experiences, but I do think that something is lost when the director's hand, right, the storyteller's hand is lost just by nature of the what do you say, the workflow, the pipeline of certain films, like having the actual built sets. For example, in Blade Runner 2049, if you strip that away, and I know that the actors themselves, Harrison Ford, Ryan Gosling, they said half of the storytelling is finished because when I step on the set, I am in like Los Angeles in 2049. I am really like, I don't have to like imagine, right? If you're on a green screen, right, and you're an actor and you're like staring at, like, this is a white circle that's supposed to be Harrison Ford, and everything's green, and there's nothing, you're like you're in a sensory deprivation chamber, having like generate Blade Runner world in your head and then act to a white ball that's supposed to be Harrison Ford. I mean, I'm not a professional actor at that scale, but I imagine that, I think that's part of what I think what's his face, Chris, Guardians of the Galaxy,
Chris Pratt.
He said, he felt kind of isolated, and he didn't feel that total immersion in the world.
The green screen.
Yeah, with acting in front of a green screen and not having people there and not being able to play off of the energy. So I don't know. I do think that kind of the process matters. I think. Whether that be in making films or in games, and personalizing the experience, like bringing something. I think Denis mentioned that being from Canada, my wife is Canadian, so I know a lot about snow. Snow, snow, like that was his personal touch, right? The snow in Blade Runner 2049 is kind of what it has the DNA of the first, but that was his kind of personal addition, especially the final scene. So but you could lose a lot of that stuff, if you. Anyway, I could wax on that for a long time, but Yeah, I don't know how you
Yeah,
feel. Yeah.
that's an interesting point. I wonder if there's still a way for directors to employ the use of CG but still have that uh, directorial stamp on it, you know? I'm sure there is. Yeah, Denis would be a good example. He like splices in CG in a more, you already know, so I'm just echoing you. He splices it in a more unobtrusive way that, yeah, doesn't pull you out of the story. So, yeah, I'm a big Denis fan.
Oh yeah, have you seen all of his? Was it Prisoners, Arrival? Have you seen his other films?
Most of them, yeah. Sicario's another good one.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That was a intense film, I would say.
Yeah, there's a good making of featurette on Sicario where it shows how um, they recreated that border scene on the Mexican border where the shootout is, and
Uh,
how basically there's like a green screen right beyond the border gates, but I couldn't tell when I watched the movie, and they, yeah, that's like they did a really good job of um, splicing in the technology, that CG background, but mixing it with the physical set. Um, so yeah, I think he's a very good example of how to properly employ technology. But yeah, now we're veering into film territory.
yeah, it's fine. I mean, I think like it's I mean, at the core of a lot of games, I mean, some games are more like sports, but storytelling is as adventure games go. I would say like that is one of the core pillars of it, and so I think it is relevant, to anyone who's trying to make an adventure game. There's a lot of I think I don't know all my demographics, but I think there's a lot of developers who listen to this, and so it is important to kind of understand that the storytelling aspects of film, books, and well, film in particular, because adventure games you're in a visual medium. And there's something else that I wanted to say. One other comment I would make is Altered Carbon was also filmed on a fully constructed set in Vancouver. In like they bought like an entire, or they got an entire post. It was like an entire postal building, and they built the entire thing out. So that's one thing I appreciated about it. Yeah, that was interesting. One other director. Do you know Neill Blomkamp?
Yeah.
Have you watched? Yeah, I mean that was that's one of my inspirations. Yeah, District 9. Uh, uh, District 9. I think that might be my favorite science fiction film of the last couple decades. I really like that film a lot for similar reasons. The way that the CG was added
Hmm.
to that. I don't know if you.
Yeah, he was like a visual effects guy before he became a director, right?
Yes, and I believe he did like game, like he did like 3D game visual effects, 3D effects. Yeah, I think that's what it was. Yeah, he's South African. Yeah,
Yeah,
which gives it. Yeah,
with a very uh, core social message to his films. District 9 also, in particular. Maybe all of his films.
yeah. I would say they all have. I mean, that I really liked. I like the like they're not necessarily. I mean, like, again, this will get back to that kind of like semantic debate, but I feel like District 9 has a lot of the core, as I understand them, like cyberpunk themes. One of them being, the punk in cyberpunk, right? Being a commentary, a social, fighting of authoritarian. What do you call it?
Regime.
Yeah, regimes. Just dystopian societies, and the way that one group is trying to resist, survive. I think Chappie and District 9 and Elysium all have that kind of like core of this kind of like rage of the underclass is
Mm-hmm.
kind of the core of it. I mean, District 9 is more well, I don't want to spoil all these films, but I would just say I'm a huge fan. Those were influences for stuff that I make.
Yeah.
And
What do
yeah.
you think about the seminal cyberpunk texts, those being like Neuromancer and Snow Crash? I actually just read those for the first time in like the past year or so, so I'm interested. What are your thoughts on those?
Neuromancer and Snow Crash. Yeah, like yeah, it's a long. I want to try to shorten this story. But my kind of connection to cyberpunk, I kind of think of it as cyberpunk. William Gibson, right, who wrote Neuromancer, and I believe it was like 1982. I want to say, I might be getting that wrong, but it was like, I know he went to Blade Runner. Blade Runner came out 2 months before Neuromancer. So again, it's kind of one of the kind of like Altered Carbon and Gemini Rue have these kind of, what do you call it, isometric, what is this a word for, just random similarities. I think that Blade Runner, because of the milieu, the zeitgeist of the culture, right, it just randomly very similar. I think that randomly Blade Runner and Neuromancer have a lot of similarities because of they were speaking to it was science fiction is talking about the president, which is written, which I believe is Ursula K. Le Guin quote, anyway, so I think that Blade Runner and Neuromancer were very well connected because it was trying to speak to a world, right, that was, kind of, it was speaking to Reaganomics. Was an era of inequality was increasing. If you were a young person who just graduated college, I mean, there's some similarities to nowadays, in the sense that there were less jobs. There are a lot of young kids in the streets of LA. William Gibson was in New York early on. He played in an actual punk band, going like, what am I going to do in my future? I don't have anything to do. That was kind of the punk movement, was kind of a anti like extreme predatory capitalism sort of stance. And what if we added like merging of human and technology, and we took this to the next level, and computer technology, what would that be like? And that was kind of like, I feel like that's new. Anyway, I could go a long time, but Neuromancer, so I feel like that was the seminal work. Snow Crash is kind of like the, was it early 90s, and that kind of identified the internet, it kind of like nailed the milieu of the internet culture itself, kind of the pop cultural, I don't know, the meme world. It kind of predicted 4chan and the meme world and all the different communities online. And so anyway, but yeah, I mean, full disclosure, and I said it every podcast, but I met William Gibson himself and my wife at the same time in Vancouver. Because we were both fans. We were both William Gibson board members, and he actually like would come down and hang out with his fans. And so I'm from Hawaii, so I flew up to Vancouver. She's from Canada. We met in Vancouver, and William Gibson was married, so I was like, what the hell? I'll just marry her instead.
Nice.
But yeah, that's basically that's why I'm like, that's my identity itself is deeply like enmeshed with cyberpunk because of that. Because a lot of my socialization, my friends, everybody that I know was kind of in that world, so I have a weird relationship to it. But I'm a fan of the books for a long time. If you do read any book and you want to know what is cyberpunk, and as the official chairman of cyberpunk that I am, no, I'm not. Bruce Sterling is. You should read Neuromancer.
I finally read Neuromancer and Snow Crash, just because I've heard they were the founding texts of cyberpunk. So I just owed it to myself, I thought, to finally read them. And yeah, I enjoyed them both. They're very different in their writing styles and I guess subject matter too. But yeah, I thought they were interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably see now, like, I mean, I'm sure you can see the
influences they had on pop culture and everything after that.
Like, I think New Yen, like in Shadowrun, I don't know if you've ever played that, but the New Yen was basically lifted from the New Yen in Neuromancer. That I think that's what it's called in there.
Yeah.
So there's
Neuromancer uses, I think they use the phrase "the Matrix," right?
The Matrix.
Which is the Matrix later in the 90s.
There's like so much. I mean, like I think nobody's really, one reason why Neuromancer has kind of stood the test of time. It's the only one who won. It's the only book that won the Hugo, the Nebula, and the Philip K. Dick Award, the triumvirate of science fiction. It's the only book that's ever done that. As I think,
Really?
I might be mistaken. I believe so.
Dune hasn't done that?
Which one?
Dune?
I have to go look it up. I know it's won 3 awards.
Yeah, I'm just at a guess there.
Yeah, it could be Dune though. Dune was another huge seminal work. But it's just one of the. I mean, like it's tough to top. I mean, William Gibson's writing style is just he has the deepest literary reach. He was a professional student for like 15 years, so I think that he's read more books than like I think anybody that I've ever heard of. And so he's really, and particularly a lot of science fiction books, and he's really got the mastery of like just wordsmithing. It's like he talks about everything simultaneously, like kind of like the sky above the port was the color of television tuned to a dead channel. There's like I don't know, it's just the level of poetry, like the level of layers of meaning that he can wrap into one sentence, and is just like nobody can really match that. I mean, there's people who kind of try to copy it, and I would say Richard Kay. I'm sure he would admit that he tries to copy it, the writer of Altered Carbon. But it's tough to really. It's kind of like trying to copy Mozart or trying to copy Jimi Hendrix or trying to copy outright copy Ridley Scott. Like you're always just going to be the cheap, the bargain bin Ridley Scott. Like you're.
Right.
So, anyways, that's kind of me waxy, but yeah, I would read, like it's. I mean, I don't want to say. I'm sure Bruce Sterling now. I'm trying to get the guy who coined the word cyberpunk, Bruce Bethke, on this podcast. One of these days, he wrote a story called Cyberpunk. The origin of the word itself is a story called Cyberpunk. It's free. You can read it online. It's like 1,000 words or something.
Okay.
And the guy Bruce Bethke hangs out in the Cyberpunk Facebook group, and he's a friendly guy. But anyways, it's if you want to check out more cyberpunk literature, Bruce Bethke, Bruce Sterling.
Okay.
There's some names you want to check. But I mean, Snow Crash and Neuromancer are like those are like the seminal. Those are like not the Bibles, but like kind of the Bible, I suppose. Book wise.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean. Yeah, so I mean, like I don't know. Yeah, I know it's like you're kind of like you're sci-fi, and I know you kind of know some cyberpunk. How about have you watched any of the anime? I see you mentioned Ghost in the Shell.
I've seen just the more mainstream anime. I'm not a deep dive fanatic, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so I've seen like Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, few others like FLCL, but not too many sci-fi anime.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like Ghost. I mean, if you watch any Ghost in the Shell, it would be the one. What's his name? James Spanos was the programmer of Primordia. He's the one who's like Ghost in the Shell is like his favorite. I think that's what he said. I don't know if you're familiar. Well, yeah, he was. I think he mentioned. Well, I don't know if you know James Spanos by any chance.
No, not personally.
Oh, okay, yeah, never mind. I know he's like a longtime AGS guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, so you said you started reading more of the books. Like, I don't know what do you. I don't know if somebody was to make another movie or book, or I don't know what was something that you would like to see expanded upon, or is there something that you see like in modern cyberpunk or in modern film or in games that you liked in the books that doesn't show up anymore, or is there something like I don't know? Because you have a different lens into this as being somebody who, you're kind of just discovering the books for the first time. I mean, I don't know. Was there something that really struck you about that, or about the genre, or that's not being touched on nowadays?
Not particularly. I think more so it was interesting. This is at least for Snow Crash and Neuromancer. It's interesting going back to those earlier texts just to see how much they made an influence on later things. Like how you can see traces of later films or TV shows in those early works. Like I thought the film Inception. Like I thought I saw a lot of that in Neuromancer actually, just like in the themes or the characters and the motivations. I don't know if you saw a parallel there too.
Inception.
Inception and Neuromancer.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen Inception, but I know definitely Inception. I felt like this is kind of very Matrixy with like it's like, you know, it's kind of like that kind of like, well, I mean, in terms of like the technology, like in, you know, being in one place but your consciousness being projected into kind of an alternate reality kind of thing. I mean, that's definitely something that well, what is the guy that directed that? Christopher Nolan, was it?
Nolan, yeah.
I feel like he's definitely a big. I mean, it's pretty obvious that he's read some Gibson, and I definitely picked that up. I compared it to The Matrix, but thinking if I go back and watch it again, I probably will see the connections. You're talking about the plot of the kind of like Neuromancer's kind of gangsters working for, you know, criminals working for these larger criminals, right?
Yeah, like I thought there were some parallels in like just maybe the narrative structure, like a team using this new technology to steal and work together. Just maybe even just in the simple structure of the story and some of its themes, I saw some parallels between the two.
Definitely like Neuromancer. Have you seen Johnny Mnemonic by any chance?
No, I haven't seen that with Keanu Reeves.
This is like Keanu Reeves 4 years out of Bill and Ted, so he's younger Keanu Reeves. It's that's like I would say that's like Keanu Reeves is one of the short. I mean, until Altered Carbon, that is like I think it's one of the most cyberpunk of the cyberpunk films that have come out of, let's say, Hollywood. I mean, anime has its own thing, but as the live action films go, Johnny Mnemonic is, I mean, it got kind of lambasted, I would say, in the reviews. It can be kind of cheesy in parts. The technology was not, you know, it's early, you know, 90s CG, you know, there's some, but I think like it's based on a character from William Gibson's Burning Chrome series, and Johnny is mentioned in Neuromancer as Molly's ex. And so then it's a film that's worth checking out though. It's the first like jacking into cyberspace. Johnny Mnemonic is this character who is he's a courier who you know, he has to upload, like, you know, he transmits like sensitive corporate information from one headquarters to another, or from one place to another, storing it in his brain. And he actually had his childhood removed from his neurons in the back of his head. And instead, he puts in like corporate secrets to transmit it from place to place because it's the most secure way. It's like the unhackable method of data transfer. So, it's worth a look. If nothing else, to see Keanu Reeves in Cyberpunk. Keanu Reeves himself is actually going to be making another Cyberpunk film, as I understand it, called Replicants or Replicas, I think. So,
cool.
So it's I mean, I don't know. It's I keep track of a lot of these things because it's one other fun fact. Keanu Reeves, the what's his face? Takeshi Kitano is the I mean, going back to the, you know, just to bring this back to Gemini Rue, the Yakuza in Johnny Mnemonic, the Oyabun, the boss, is portrayed by Takeshi Kitano, who is a famous Japanese celebrity, and is also the name of the first name of the main character in Altered Carbon is Takeshi Kovacs. So, and anyway, that's just some trivia.
Yep, many similarities cross media.
Yeah. Have you seen anything by Takeshi Kitano by any chance, the director?
What has he made?
It's mostly Japanese films, so you'd have to have watched some. It's like you'd have to have watched some actual Japanese films. Like what is most fun? If you don't watch foreign films, you probably wouldn't have seen it. Although he did direct the most recent Zato Ichi film. He's not well known in the West, really.
I don't think I have seen any of his films. Not that I recall.
Yeah, but if you want to watch a film that has actual Yakuza doing gangstery things. I mean, doing a lot of smoking and chopping each other up with swords. Takeshi Kitano is the director for that. He's like the director who does like the Japanese gangster films, but most of it's in Japanese. It's gonna be hard to find in the West. But yeah, anyways, we have to wrap it up soon. So Gemini Rue, if you haven't played it yet, I highly recommend everybody go out and try it. If you're a fan of film noir, cyberpunk, science fiction, Blade Runner, I mean, any of the things that we've talked about, I think of Gemini Rue as like, it is like, it is, it's like the top shelf stuff as neo-noir goes, and neo-noir adventure games. So I'm a big fan. I've played through it, like, I think at least 2 times.
Have you played the commentary?
I don't think I'm gonna have to go do that now. I will do that. So I will know more of the trivia next time you ask me questions or someone asks. But yeah, it's Gemini Rue is a great game by Wide Jedi Games, and it's I don't know. Yeah, I mean, like I joke that, like, yeah, just trying to get all the Wadjet trying to get all the Wadjet Eye guys on, but I mean, I do feel like that is there's a lot. I mean, it's I don't want to say point and click. Every time someone says point and click adventure games are dead, somebody writes an article about it, so I don't want to say that. But I think that the Wadjet Eye titles have been a big part of bringing a new life to the genre. I not like single-handedly save it, but it definitely. This is one of the games. So, and I mean, for sure, this particular adventure game buyer, I would probably not have any adventure games in my library if it wasn't for them. So thanks a lot for making Gemini Rue. Josh, where can we find you? Or anything else you want to say about anything?
Well, is there any game-related topic we should end with? I feel like we veered off into a wide range of territory, so we need to bring it back to something more game-related. Right.
Game-related, yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. What? I mean, like, I don't know too much about you. So what? Yeah. What's something that you really wanted to say about games, or that we didn't touch on?
Oh. Well, go play Gemini Rue, go play Wadjet Eye Games, and go play Chris's game.
I don't know have you heard of Neofeud by any chance? I don't know if you, maybe not.
I checked it out, checked the trailer. It seems very all-encompassing. You've got a lot of themes and characters and stories going on in there.
Yeah, it's a lot going on. It's a lot going on. It's a lot of the elevator pitch is, what is it? I think it's like Blade Runner crossed with Game of Thrones or something like that. And it's I try. I'm not the biggest fantasy fan, or but I was like, just to wrap it up with the games, going back, you want to try to do something a little different, and so with the game I wanted to kind of infuse a little bit of other, I didn't want to make just another, Blade Runner adventure game ripoff, or I didn't want to do Gemini Rue again. I love that game. I probably, or I didn't want to do Techno Babylon again. So I was like, I got to add something to make this unique. And it's part of it was like having a, it's like a 1366. It's super high. I mean, as AGS games go, it's like pretty high resolution. So the art style is kind of different. And it's got a lot of, themes. I wanted to kind of touch on modern themes. As I mentioned, I don't know if you came across this, but I'm Hawaiian. I'm native Hawaiian, and I was a former social worker. So similar to the District 9 character, I wanted to kind of infuse that experience of people who were living at the margins of society and poverty into the game, to kind of bring that the underclass experience in the way that Neill Blomkamp, the prawns in District 9, who are basically living in a refugee camp, and why can't we just get rid of these people? And the main character is a social worker, which is Vicus in District 9, similar to Carl Carbon and Neofeud, are both social workers, as opposed to like die-hard cops or FBI's, tough guys, So anyway, that's I don't know. That's thanks for checking it out at all.
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. But yeah, it's definitely like, yeah. I hope to like. Near Feud was the one big. I think. Well, there might have been a couple. There's a few other Legend of Hand. There's a few other adventure game studio games that came out in 2017. But Near Feud, I think, was the longest game. I think it's. I think it might actually be longer than any of the Wild Jedi games. If you play through, if you get through all the content, it does have good amount of, it's a good amount of dialogue and text in it.
How many rooms do you have in the game?
Rooms, I don't even remember. It's like 70, 80. It might not have as many rooms. How many rooms is Gemini Rue?
It has about 80. A lot of them are reused. Maybe you also did the same thing in your game, reused a lot of the same rooms.
Yeah. There's some reused rooms. There's some like I painted it at like 6,000 resolution.
Okay.
And then I dropped it down. So sometimes I have like there's like a zoomed out shot, and then it kind of zooms in, which I was trying to, again, like, I mean, as you mentioned, like it's kind of like the time saving device. My thing was I wanted to kind of like maximize the mileage out of each scene, because the style is difficult because you're painting at that many pixels. That's like 100 times the pixels, so it's tricky. So by having a zoomed out and a zoomed in version, that like increases the mileage a little bit. That was my thinking. I don't know if it works, but that's what I thought. But yeah, I mean, like, how long is Gemini Rue technically? I don't know. It's pretty long, right? It's like,
I think the average player can beat it anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. So maybe just put that at 6 hours, maybe higher, 8 hours.
Yeah, I think it took me longer. Mostly I sucked at adventure games pretty badly when I played Resonance first, which was a mistake because I was not very good, and that game is complex, and I did eventually get through it. But I'd say 4 to 8 hours is about right. I think Primordia is about that 7. Techno Babylon is longer, I think, but it was made in 4 sections. But yeah, I would say, Nifty is about 12, 10 to 12, and 15 if you get all the achievements and go back. There's an achievement for dying every single possible way in Neophyte. So if you haven't died at least like 10 times, you're doing it wrong. You're like,
you got to get those achievements.
That's a thing that there's like a lot of people who only buy games just to get achievements nowadays. I know that's something apparently. I don't understand it myself. I didn't intend to have achievements, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's a nice add-on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we added it when we had the Steam integration, so it wasn't in the game until we put it on Steam.
Oh, I see. And then did you have to go? Did you have to like go back and kind of just? I guess you just kind of think up things like what was that process like when you had to convert everything into Steam?
Yeah, as far as the achievements, I think they were added like after the fact. So I don't think we like created new stuff to become an achievement. It was more like, what are some things in the game that are hard to do but are already there and you can do them, like get a headshot on every baddie, like turn that into an achievement. So that's kind of how I approached it for that.
This is one thing I will say, and I'm hurting my own game sales by saying this, but I mean, from Gemini Rue, one thing I definitely took was I love the combat system. I mean, again, being like being a recovering FPS addict. I mean, I was kind of like, wow, this is like, that's pretty. I mean, that's obviously you had to code all that in, and I was like, wow, how did they get this done? I was kind of like trying to figure out how to do that, because I like that those little action sequences, as you mentioned, it does kind of heighten the tension in certain. I mean, apart from being fun to play, it did kind of like heighten the tension in those scenes, and I really wanted to capture that. There is a scene in Near Field that has a cover shooter mechanic that borrows some gameplay. What do you call it? It's similar in gameplay to that. Although a lot of people found it extraordinarily difficult the first time through. And I had to go back and basically like reprogram that sequence like 3 different times because of like all these. I don't know, but how was that like that? The making the shooting mechanic in
Yeah, programming it was not too difficult. I did have to change it so that the actual moment you get shot is synced up with the frame of the enemy firing the gun, because they were actually they were not synced up at first. It was like the gunshot from the enemy was on a timer, and then the animation was kind of on its own timer. But some people got very annoyed by that, so I synced them up as they should have been. But in general, I think adventure gamers are very stubborn when it comes to getting some action sequences in their games. Yeah, they're very resistant to that for some reason.
I definitely encountered that. I noticed, just with the beta test, there was, I could tell who the hardcore adventure game testers were because the comment would be like,
there's action scenes in here. There should not be action scenes in adventure games. That's.
Yeah, and like I don't want to have to do, hand coordination or anything with timing. Yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting. I mean, like. Some people were like, the people who were like, not so particular, were like, yeah, that was fun. Although it's broken, can you please fix all the bugs because the game keeps exploding and crashing my computer when you do. And I had to go back and fix it because it was complicated. Well, the complication on my end was there were 2 playable characters that you have to manipulate into position. This is my, in my own hubris, I was trying I'm going to do better than Gemini. I'm going to have 2 players that you have to like swap between, and one of them is going to be firing, and the other one is going to be like opening grates and blowtorching the escape and all these, That
sounds fun. I would have tried to do that if I had the idea.
Yeah, and it's I think in retrospect, that's what I was thinking. I was like, yeah, so one character has to be, covering, and you have to fire while the other character has to go back and find the escape. And that will be really interesting because, it'll add another level of tension because you have to do a lot more timing stuff. Yeah. In retrospect, I would have, if I had to do it again, I would have had more shooting sequences throughout the game because that is like, that's basically like one of the only sequences in which that happens. So it's one of the cases of in game design kind of, taking the just dropping the kitchen sink, like the difficulty goes from 0 to like 8 all of a sudden, and everybody's like, oh my god, you can't surprise me like that. If it had been introduced more slow, like in Gemini Rue, you have several different
it's very
shooting
gradual
sequences.
It's a build in Gemini Rue, like the features get slowly added on one by one.
Yeah, the last sequence, by the way, which is that was really intense. I screwed that up like I don't know how many times. So it was.
Yeah, I think people kind of or they don't understand the last sequence because you're actually supposed to go out the top side of the pillar, and I don't think people know that because the boss will shoot at different sides of the pillar that you're taking cover on, and then when he's shooting at the bottom side, you're supposed to go out the top side. But I think some people never figure that out. Just a small note.
Yeah, I don't think I figured that out myself, so I will write that down next time I play through with the commentary.
Yeah, that's the designer's fault, not the player's fault.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, on the game top, it's like interesting how that, I mean, that's one problem I have had with the games that I've made. I've made other games besides Near Feud. The last one was a Deus Ex immersive sim, and the difficulty basically it's the same problem. The difficulty is not graduated enough. You die of starvation in the tutorial was one of the big complaints in that game.
Yikes.
So if you ever try, basically like if you ever quick aside, if you ever play Terminus Machina, that's my Deus Ex game, beat Deus Ex on hard first. Otherwise, I guarantee you will be like eviscerated in the first 3 seconds of that game. It's very difficult, which is my bad, and I don't have time to go back and fix it. But one day I will if you kickstart me for like $100,000. Okay, all right.
Nice.
That's my plug for my future Kickstarter. I actually have thought of going back and fixing it, but
That's a good Kickstarter. You'd get a lot of publicity from that.
I got an endorsement from the creator of Gemini. I'm thinking about going back and fixing it up one day. But definitely, I do think that there's something to be said about and I wish I could have gone back and refined a lot of the difficulty and fixed some more of the bugs. I had to get the game out the door. You know, I had like 2.5 years, and we were actually like living out of a car, so I was actually homeless at the end of the game. I ran out of money, and so I kind of like, I don't have any more time to be doing this. Kind of had to get the show on the road, but I mean, in the next game, I'm trying to learn the lessons. I mean, I think that's the important thing. If I ever have a cover shooter, I'm gonna make it more Gemini Rue-ish with a graduated curve. Gonna try to. I'm probably gonna cut the dialogue down, like as you said. Although I think Gemini Rue has the right amount of dialogue. Personally, that's my personal. I would have been fine with more because I'm used to reading and listening to more. But I mean, I don't know what your testers have said. I don't know, the color scheme. How about, like, you know, that the music, was that Dave, or was it did you have any input in that? Or
That was all done by Nathan Allen Pinard, the musician.
I see. And then did you like say, I kind of want something like this, or is this kind of like just Dave, or he just kind of looked at it?
Yeah, the way we worked was I would give him an early build of the game, and Nathan would play through a scene and then write the score based on how he felt this scene should sound for the music, and which I thought ended up pretty good. Like, I think the music does a great job of providing ambience.
Yeah, it's a very noir. I guess you could. It's not quite. It has some Vangelis-esque things going on there.
Yeah, not too much Vangelis.
It's not because Vangelis, I believe, it composed on like an old school Casio keyboard. So obviously, it's not in that sense is it Vangelis, but it's definitely it does fit the tone. Like it fits the mood. Sometimes, like, I remember just like sitting there and like listening to it and just kind of chilling for a little bit. And with the rain is kind of soothing in a certain sense, in a weird way. And it really adds a lot. Did you program that in, or was that the?
That's like a graphic overlay plugin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's an AGS plugin.
Oh, AGS plugin. Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah. Like I don't know. Yeah. It's it just kind of really came together. I can't really think of like anything I disliked about it. Entire game. I even don't remember encountering any crashes or anything like that. So, how long did that take for you when you guys were beta testing? Did you like have like a whole? I guess Dave helped out with his army of testers, as you mentioned. How long did it take for you to iron out all the bugs?
Yeah. When I handed it over to Dave's army, I was working. I was like, polishing the game for a while. So I thought, okay, all the bugs are gone, right? But then the moment I give it to all the new testers, I think we were testing it for like 6 months with like maybe 4 or 5 rounds of testing. And yeah, they found a lot of new bugs. So they did a good job. That's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, he's got a very in-depth QA. Yeah, his process is he's very rigid. I mean, which is good because that maintains the quality of the brand, right? When it comes to releases, especially nowadays, I will tell you, it is rough on Steam. I mean, people, I would say it's if there's anything that people don't like at all, and like anything, people don't hesitate to, let's say, comment on that. So really taking the time to really get everything right and make sure the bugs are ironed out is like probably a good a good idea before you release it. So Dave's probably really smart in that regard. But yeah, I think that's pretty good. I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to be checking out soon. But I don't know. It's just, yeah, it's been really great talking to you. I think we can agree that Blade Runner is the most cyberpunk film of all time.
Yep.
Can we agree on that? Yeah.
I agree on that.
You agree on that? The book, I don't know. We're gonna see how much Bruce Sterling is gonna pay me to plug his book next time. No, I'm just kidding. I don't. Bruce is. I don't really know Bruce in person. I know William Gibson a little bit. He tweeted the birth of our child, which is interesting.
Nice.
Which is, yeah, that was fun. He said, "Oh, we named her Molly, in honor of Mr. Gibson." And then he tweeted, "Don't worry, the 6-inch retractable razors don't come in for the first 8 months," or something like that. It was pretty funny. So if you ever have a child, name her after a William Gibson character and tweet him. I don't know what the point of that is. That's some stupid joke that I'm making. Anyways, yeah. Thanks so much for coming on, Josh. Thanks again for making Gemini Rue. Yeah. Anything else you wanna say?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I think we were able to cover a very wide range of topics. So, yeah, we exhausted a lot of the cyberpunk genre across different media. So, yeah, we did a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I'm really horrible at signing out of these things, so I'm gonna say Dave Gilbert advised me to say thank you for listening and goodbye.